Hello, here for another video. I'm going to do things again a little bit differently this time, so trying to kind of figure out how I want to do these things. Watching this game yesterday, I think was was a very interesting experience, and I think it actually shows one of the reasons why draft is kind of important. So I kind of wanted to go over the draft that TSM and IMT put together here, right? Because I actually think that a lot of the things that TSM did were very exploitable. And I'm not a super huge fan of them. Just kind of starting off with bans. IMT and TSM bans make a lot of sense. TSM's really like the Nocturne. They've liked the Lucian, so getting rid of both of those really opens up for a free Gwen pick on B1 if it's not banned, right? Lulu, I'm assuming, is just to try to dissuade a Cog Lulu pick, or just even putting Huni on Lulu top. I know it's something that he can play. For TSM side, banning the Rumble. Xerxes picked Rumble almost every time it's up. Akali just because it's one of the OPs of the patch. And then the Karma ban is, I think, where things start to go a little bit stray, right? So the whole idea is if you're not going to ban Gwen, right, you have to have something that feels good to answer into Gwen with, right? With Nocturne off the table, that kind of lowers your options a lot. I think Jace is a good answer, and they did end up going with it. But Nocturnes, I feel like, is the most simple answer. You can match her in the side lane. You can match her, I think, until 2 items. And then things start to go a little bit odd. But one of the things that also is super nice is being able to take Karma on 1-2 on red side as an answer, right? Because you get to take the Karma away from the Ezreal, if they decide to actually take it. Or you can even just go Ezreal Karma on 1-2. What TSM decides to do instead is just B1 Senna, or sorry, not B1 Senna, R1 Senna, and take Lee Sin. I think the Lee Sin's entirely fine. Lee Sin is something that can triple flex, obviously. The one downside is that now, once Gwen is picked, Lee Sin's matchup into Gwen isn't good, so you know for sure that at least Lee Sin is not going into the Gwen lane. So that's one lane you can't go into. So at that point, it's more of a double flex. The main concern here comes with the Senna on 1. So Senna is a pick that I think is ultra abusable in a lot of different drafts. Not only you can say that she's abused by mages, but now pretty much no one's playing mages in LCS right now unless it's Seraphine. So you can just say, all right, here's the pick she can be abused by. She can be abused by Varus. She can be abused by Cog with any Enchanter. She can be abused by Jinx with Enchanter, even Jinx Thresh. All of those things have good matchups into her. Kaisa in some spots, if you really want to take it, you can take the matchup. I don't think it's abusable, but it's something you can do. And then, historically speaking, Ezreal into Senna has been more of a counter. It's been fairly Senna favored. Senna gets to scale for free and kind of heal all the damage that Ezreal is actually doing in terms of poke. But with the addition of Sunder to the game, that's kind of changed a lot, right? So I think that yes, Senna still does eventually outscale Ezreal, but it's something that happens so late into the game that you can't realistically count on that happening anymore, right? So taking Senna, leaving up Ezreal, and not just kind of like opting into that instead, I feel like is a pretty big issue. And also when you're taking Senna, because pretty much no one's playing farming Senna right now, you're pretty much tunneling yourself into fasting Senna. And when you're taking fasting Senna, like most people will either just you can take Tahm Kench, you can take Set. I think there are a lot of other options you actually can take. You can take stuff like Seraphine and Karma, but nobody's really doing that. Obviously Karma's banned. You can take Enchanters, you can take Seraphine, you can take some mages, I think, are okay with it. But you're putting yourself in a spot where they know you're going to pick a melee support that is not going to threaten the Ezreal at all. So they're getting a free Ezreal pickup, and they can pick whatever they want with the Ezreal, right? When you start to see the Volibear come in, not a huge fan of Volibear in general. I have a feeling that's just something Xerxes wants to play. It ends up making sense to the rest of the comp, but at that stage, I'm like, right. So they have Gwen Ezreal Volibear. They're at least going to try to get something done early with the Volibear, right? And then you answer with Tahm Kench, mainly due to the fact that you have to pick it on 3 if you're going to pick if you want to take it at all, because if you don't take it on 3, it gets banned on 4-5. Right, so now you're stuck in a spot where you're playing Tahm Kench into Ezreal. You can never actually threaten the Ezreal, and Ezreal's getting a scale for free. This patch, Ezreal scales like a monster with Sunder and with the Sunder Frozen Heart build, and you're kind of in a spot where I hope you can snowball the game on your top side, because if you can't, you're at a huge disadvantage, right? TSM, I think, does the correct thing. Bans Rakan and Bard. Those are two supports that pair really well with Ezreal, mainly just due to the fact that Ezreal is extremely self-sufficient in lane, and anything that can kind of roam and get stuff done around the map is a good pair with him. I think that Leona is also a fine pair. I know she was nerfed a bit, and also I don't know if Hexflash is available to players again, but if it's not, then that's another thing that kind of nerfs Leona. And to respond, IMT bans two control mages mid, totally makes sense, given PoE's Chample. After that, obviously TSM was okay taking the Jace. This is a situation where if they don't ban Senna, they can just take the Jace on 3 and just flex it wherever the Gwen goes. But because they have to take Tahm Kench, instead they have to hope they don't ban Jace, take Jace on 4. Which is totally fine, that's not that big of a deal. So what happens here is now that you pick the Jace, you're basically saying, alright, Lee Sin's most likely going to go mid. It's still a flex. Obviously, you can take it jungle, but in jungle it doesn't feel great into Volibear, right? So because they're saying, alright, let's block the Lee Sin mid pick, you can just take Ziggs, because what ends up happening if hypothetically a Lee Sin Ziggs lane were to take place, what ends up happening is as soon as Ziggs hits chapter, Lee Sin can never leave the lane. Right, Ziggs does too much damage to towers, as well as the fact that he can just insta-clear a wave after chapter, just repeatedly over and over again, due to the fact that he actually has the mana to do it. And then you're losing a lot of the actual power of the Lee Sin, given the fact that you mostly just want to take Lee Sin to just kind of push and actually make plays around the map, especially in melee lanes where you can actually kind of abuse and look to get CS leads and kills in those lanes. Lee Sin into Ziggs, it's not really something he can ever actually do that. And then because two of the other supports that pair well with Yuumi are gone, and it looks like not Yuumi, with Ezreal are gone, and it looks like IMT wants to opt themselves into a poke comp with the Ziggs. They just take the Yuumi with Ezreal, and are just content to just kind of AFK scale bot lane. Right. So now TSM is in kind of a rough spot where they're playing Senna Tahm Kench with a Lee Sin into poke. Right? It's something that in previous patches is doable because of Senna healing, but not as much anymore with how strong Ezreal and Ziggs actually are in current patch. So what they decide to do instead is they decide to kind of opt into a more of a 1-3-1 comp with the Jace and the LeBlanc, and ends up kind of putting them in a spot where they can look to just kind of go for side lane plays and look to kind of scale off of their top side of the map, right? You know that it's Ezreal Yuumi, you're playing Lee Sin jungle, you're playing Tahm Kench support, you're never going to kill the Ezreal. You kind of just ignore bot lane entirely, and you can kind of see that in Spica's Proview, which we're going to be going over later. But this puts TSM in the spot where if they can't snowball the game off of their solo lanes, they 100% lose the game, and they have to end the game before, say, 25 to 28 minutes, hopefully just rush soul and end. Because if they don't, they end up getting put in a spot where they can never access up to the wave, because once Gwen hits 2 items, your side laning presence goes down a lot, because Gwen in the side lane is obviously insane. You can't ever really take a 5v5 because you're heavily outranged by Ziggs and Ezreal, and with the Yuumi kind of keeping them topped off and keeping them fast and difficult to actually get onto, that makes it even worse, right? And God help you if you end up in a situation where you're getting sieged on. You never actually can set up to the wave, again, into Ezreal, Volibear, Ziggs, and Yuumi. If you ever actually do, you take 1 or 2 Ziggs bombs, all of a sudden Volibear is ulting on top of you, and you will die. Right, so you can't siege. Side laning gets difficult because of how strong Gwen is. And you can't actually 5v5. So the only way that you can actually fight is by taking these weird side lane things. You can see how difficult the comps actually are to play out just by looking at what happens in this game, right? You're in a spot around, let's say around here, where TSM at 18 minutes is up 5,000 gold, right? Let me just get to it to see if I can actually pull it up, right? I just say just 23 minutes, right? 23 minutes, they're up. It was 5,000 earlier, now it's 4,000, right? They're up 4,000 gold at 23 minutes. This is more than enough to end a game off of, with even-ish comps. Even if you have a slightly disadvantageous comp, why does the game go on for another 20 minutes? Is the question, right? Even to the point where let's skip ahead to 36 minutes. TSM has 3 exposed inhibitors. This game goes on, I think, for another, how long does it go on? It goes on for another 5 minutes after this point, until all the inhibitors respawn. The only way that TSM actually gets to win this game is because to be honest, IMT miscalculates on a base push, and Huni ends the game, right? Would this happen in a situation where the comps actually made sense, right? It's exactly like I said earlier. If you don't end the game by 25 to 28 minutes, the comps get impossible to play into because Gwen gets strong enough that she can just side lane. Um, Ezreal and Ziggs get strong enough where they can kind of force you off any wave, even to the point where if you're looking to side lane, Ziggs can literally just match you in the side lane just by QEing the wave and insta-clearing. He doesn't have to actually fight you at all. He just makes it so it's impossible to actually deal damage to the tower, right? So I think that the big mistake here was definitely a lot of mistakes happened here in draft, and a lot of them revolved around the setup pick. So moving away from that, let's get into what the main course here is, which is Spica's Proview, which I actually think is excellent. Let's get to the beginning of this, and we can start talking about some of the decisions he makes here. All right, Spica. Let's look at his runes. Conquer, Triumph, Standard, Tenacity, Standard, Last Stand. Yep. You can either go Last Stand or Coup depending on what you're going into. If you feel like you're going to be if you're going Gore Drinker build, a lot of the time you're going to be fairly low on HP. So taking Last Stand just makes a lot of sense to just kind of get the most out of fighting, I guess, on your margins. He's taking Magical Footwear mainly because he doesn't actually need to buy boots early on. He has an up ability on his own. Also, Cosmic helps a lot because late game he's really just going to be a kick bot. So he needs to have his flash up as much as possible. The item haste helps a lot for Gore Drinker, so it's kind of something that he wants to have as much as possible. Conquer is just to make him so that when he gets in these kind of longer fights, and by the time he's lower HP, he has kind of stacked up his Conquer, he has his Gore Drinker up, he can just kind of look to drain tank against the Volibear as long as possible. So everything here just kind of checks out. These are pretty standard Lee Sin rooms. Really, Lee Sin rooms with the exception of Inspiration. Inspiration is something specific for this game. So one thing I like to note a lot about Spica's Proview is that he's doing what pretty much every jungler should actually do, which is consistently check lane states, right? This is something that if you're not used to it, looks very, I guess, odd and almost like nauseating or difficult to watch. But you have to keep in mind that when he's looking around the map, when he's F-keying around the map, he's doing it specifically to see what's going on in lanes. And this is something I even tell I tell all of my players, right? You should be able to look at a lane state as a jungler and be able to say, based off matchup, where the wave will be in 2 to 3 minutes, assuming things continue to go standard, right? To the point where you should even be able to tell your laners what you want them to do with the wave, because you should know what is and isn't possible, given matchup, right? This is something where you can literally just feel him doing this because he feels like he just controls the map the entirety of the early mid game here, especially for Huni, because his entire game plan here is just to literally try to get his solo lanes as far ahead as possible. I think he does a really good job of doing it, keeping them safe through vision, through invades, kind of working off what he can and can't actually do. So over here, just going to a standard 5-point. This is pretty normal. They're just mainly just making sure that they're not invading for any free vision, and if they do, they know where they are and aren't seen, right? PoE takes W, gets free vision there. All right, see Volibear. I'm gonna skip ahead a bit. So something I mentioned earlier is the fact that bot lane in this game is basically entirely ignored. You want nothing to do with the bot lane. It doesn't do anything. You can't ever actually kill the Ezreal Yuumi, especially not as Lee Sin, right? So you're going to kind of see this by watching Lee Sin path bot to top. He knows he should have priority early on in his mid and top lane, so he should be able to get top crab uncontested, right? Jace gets priority early, LeBlanc should get priority early, and if they try to take a 3v3, they just outright win, right? So he clears bot to top, gets off here. Huni's just being annoying, making sure that Volibear is starting there. Sorry about that. So yeah, pretty simple here. Checking around the map, seeing how waves are going, seeing how lanes start off, which is, again, the right thing to do. Like, it's a situation where you've seen a lot of pro views. A lot of junglers what they'll end up doing is they'll end up just, I guess, staring at themselves while they do the camp, which is just a massive, massive waste of time, right? There's no real reason to actually end up doing that. If you have time to look around the map, you should be looking around the map, because again, like I said, you should be able to look at a lane and know what's going to happen to it in about 2 minutes. So when you're up there, where should the lane be, right? So something that he actually does here is he goes W into E. I know a lot of people sometimes go W into Q, which is, I think, incorrect. What WE does is it allows you to keep your attack speed up consistently because Q's cooldown is a little bit higher to the point where there will be a couple auto attacks in the middle of your rotations where you don't have the extra attack speed from Lee Sin passive, right? So over here, what ends up happening is he does his red buff while watching topside, trying to see is there a chance that we can get a dive off topside. He ends up realizing no, there's not. You can't really do it. So he goes back down, finishes his full clear, clears his raptors, clears his Krugs, and calls it a day. Right? Sorry, I had to plug in my headset there. So he clears this out, no problem. He has time to get his crab, and then he has time to go up to his Krugs here. So again, he knows his top side will be able to be there first. Ziggs can't really be a threat this early on in the game. Smart enough to check to make sure Volibear's not there before going in and smiting. Because if you blow smite and Volibear still has his, you're going to lose yours every time. So actually what this ward does is it puts Jace in a position where, again, we're around 330, so we know that Volibear started top, so he's going to be pathing top to bot, right? Because he's pathing top to bot, in a couple minutes, in like a couple seconds, he's going to be finished crab. Most likely either doing the exact same things that Spica is doing and setting up vision here, or just resetting and heading back topside, right? What this ward does is it makes it so Jace can continue to do what he's doing topside, just abusing the Gwen under tower, in relative safely, knowing that when Volibear comes back up to get his topside, he'll have vision on him. He'll know he's going to come up and get himself ganked, right? So this is something that, like, if you're playing towards having your topside just be as abusive as possible, placing vision off these timers to make sure that that your top lane or whatever lane that you actually want to have pressure stay safe is super important. Because if wards like that aren't getting placed, and I know that it takes him a little bit out of his way, but if wards like that aren't getting placed, then what ends up happening is Huni's just in danger constantly, right? So it makes it so that he doesn't even have to leave his lane to get vision. And it only takes like an extra, like 4 or 5 seconds. So he finishes his clear with Krugs, and in a second you're going to see Volibear walk over that vision in an attempt to gank topside. Pings it out to make sure, alright, there he is. Krugs are coming back up, and he goes back bot side. Looking around at his lanes, alright, that's what's going on bot lane. Seeing that they're getting kind of pushed in, which is kind of natural. When he eventually does want to go bot, though, Senna will be able to bounce back the wave. Number one, because there is about to crash, so when the wave crashes, it'll naturally bounce back. Lee Sin, when he looks down there, he realizes that what he sees is that when the wave bounces back, he can go for Drake at 6 minutes for free, or 5.5 whenever it spawns. All right, again, keeping an eye on when Volibear shows up, clearing his bot side until then. All right, there's Volibear. Okay. So again, Huni's in relative safely. He knows if Volibear comes, it's the path he has to take. So he can continue to just kind of abuse the Gwen under tower. He has vision. He's in an okay spot, checking around the lanes. All right. So at this point, Spica knows that Volibear is top. He knows when he got to his Gromp, and being a jungler, he understands how long the second clear takes. So he knows that by the time that he's done with Drake, he should really only be around his Raptors. And because LeBlanc pushed up to get that Raptor ward, he can do the Drake in relative safely, knowing that if he decides to walk past Raptor straight to Drake, then he can pull off if he has to. Right? So, again, because you looked down earlier, you see that wave is crashing bot, you know the wave is eventually going to push back out. Right? By the time you get here, the wave will be out, your bot lane is able to come up and help you out with the dragon. Right? LeBlanc, I don't know if LeBlanc TP'd on our own or if he called for TP, but LeBlanc TPing is just to make sure that Ziggs can't walk down and and pressure the Drake, and just in case he decides to come down for whatever reason, right? So LeBlanc TPs, catches our wave, and because LeBlanc is going to be in lane, Ziggs is going to be out of lane, and Jace has pressure, they just want to make sure that they're not giving away crab for free. So they make a 3-man play on crab so that Volibear stays as far behind as possible. Oh, they catch him there. And this is what you can do when you're playing around your lane's pressure, right? When your lanes have priority, this is stuff you should be doing constantly. You should be looking for invade. You should be looking to contest every objective possible, because you know that in any situation, you're going to get there first. You're going to burst whoever shows up to it, right? Alright, so he's got his crab, skipping ahead a bit. Walks up here again. So this is another thing that he does. He places this pink down here with the express knowledge that, all right, blue up's coming up. Xerxes has to be around here soon. Let's keep Huni safe, right? Because when Xerxes comes up for blue buff, what he's going to do is we're going to see him there. We're going to see is there any vision on the buff. All right, he's going to keep him safe. All right. He's not showing up. He's not showing up. Normally, this would be the time that Xerxes would be starting to path. So he sees, all right, my lanes have priority. What I can do is I can do this as soon as it gets up. And because LeBlanc can be there first and Jace can be there first, he can kind of kite it over to the I guess the mouth of blue entrance, and know that even if Volibear comes, he should be totally fine because his laners are going to be there first. Pops that so that Volibear can't have any interesting gank paths where he just kind of paths around vision. Because like the general idea, the only way Volibear kind of gets a gank onto topside at this point with this level of vision control topside is if he takes an interesting path. One of the paths he can take if he suspects that Lee Sin has his blue warded or his Gromp warded, is he can walk through lane, go through this bush here, and then just take Blast Plant over. Right, Blast Plant creates a lot of those kind of creative gank paths that make it very difficult for top and bot laners to play. So if you're ever in that spot, you should be popping Blast Plant 100% of the time. Unless you're going to be specifically trying to use it for an escape later on, there's no reason to actually keep it there. Right? Because all it's going to do is it's going to make it more difficult for you to actually ward. It's like every single jungler is Kayn, basically, and they're just coming through the one spot you haven't warded to gank you. So he continues his clear. There's not really much left for him to do. He's keeping his top side safe. He's keeping his bot side safe. What a lot of people will tend to over-focus on is the fact that Lee Sin is 0-0-0 at 7 minutes and 40 seconds, right? And they see that as like kind of an abject failure because you see Lee Sin as someone that wants to kind of get in there, get early action, and just kind of be as oppressive as possible early. But like I said earlier, first blood happens this game at 18 minutes. By this point, TSM has a 5k gold lead. This is almost entirely through what Spica has done for the top side of his map in the early game. So just because he didn't have any kills before that point doesn't mean he wasn't extremely effective as a jungler. Right? He's understanding what's going on in his lanes. He's playing to what his laners need to actually do to be successful, and he's ensuring that happens, right? So he's basically playing towards win condition without actually needing to get fed himself, right? So he's here, just again keeping Huni safe. Yeah, you see these kinds of paths are the only real way that they can look to get an edge in the early game here, because of how strong the Jason to Gwen is, as well as the LeBlanc into Ziggs early on. It's just really tough matchups to play in terms of like actually taking fights. So again, he sees Volibear clearing out his vision. He knows he has to clear his Gromp and Wolves and be clearing the bot side. So he's going to hand over blue to LeBlanc. He has his own already. Skip ahead a bit, starts it. LeBlanc's going to be down. All right. He's hitting every blue, and now LeBlanc has blue. She can push and wave, and he can look for an invade on Volibear's bot side. If he wants to. Right, no, he'll full clear instead. That's fine. So you can clear there. The main reason you want to give LeBlanc as many blues as possible, not only because obviously she's a mage and she likes having the mana. The main thing is that if she doesn't have blue buff, she can't ever really match Ziggs push, right? She has to use W to actually push. W is a 100 cost spell. So if she doesn't have blue, then what ends up happening is Ziggs gets her own priority and LeBlanc can never actually leave her lane. So you want to make sure LeBlanc has blue as often as possible whenever you want to make plays, because if she doesn't have it, it's just impossible to ever do anything, right? Again, you're catching the Volibear out. He's trying again to get something out of topside. They have so much vision in their top side for Huni to actually be safe. They can never actually catch him out on topside. All right, so you see that they've got Crab. Volibear's in the area. But now that Volibear's topside, he's probably cleared his top camp. He's probably going to path bot side now. And Speak actually does a good job of capitalizing on this. There are some things that are kind of weird about top Crab when it comes to vision around Baron Pit specifically, right? and I think you're going to see it in a second. I actually really like that that it gets taken advantage of here. So you can actually get a lot of these things even without gap closers. Getting into pit um, without being seen on crab is something that can happen very, very easily. And you're going to see Huni do it too, because there's a spot right over here that not a lot of people really realize that if you kind of hug this wall, you don't actually get seen on crab. On this side you do. So if you try to go straight down, you will eventually get seen on the top of crab because your bottle will go over it. But if you just kind of hug down this wall to head into pit, you can get in for free. Right? And you can see it with him actually doing it. He's even pinging it out, saying, all right, this is the route you take to get in for free. They're not going to see you. All right. So they can get this for Huni. And what they're basically doing is they're basically saying, all right, crab. Dragon's going to be spawning in the next 30 seconds. When Volibear and them path down for Dragon, because obviously we're not going to have bot priority, we're playing Senatom Kench into Ezreal Yumi. When they go down for that, we can look to make a play on top tower. So they get that off vision entirely. Now that they're on it, Volibear walks down, says, all right, they're on top side, I can get Drake for free here, and I have priority bot. This is what happens when you look at your lane states and you understand, all right, my bot's getting pushed in. I obviously can't make a play for Drake, so instead, what you do is you look to make a cross map play. So when they have their timer for Drake on spawn, what you do is you've already got the Herald taken, and you can instead just go for plates topside. Getting Jace ahead in this situation is one of the most important things you could possibly do. You have to get Jace ahead to actually win this game, because you have to have a side lane presence against Gwen, and if he's not ahead, then Gwen just eats him alive, right? So because Gwen took a reset, I don't know if Jace forced it or whatever, they end up getting this entire tower in exchange for Drake. And they're getting you could say 4 plates worth of gold, but it's really 2 plates because they're splitting it with Lee Sin. 2 plates worth of gold onto Jace, and first tower onto Jace. Because they have pinks in top river, LeBlanc doesn't actually have to come up to threaten, right? If you ever disappear from your lane and it's shown that you're walking topside, you don't actually have to walk to the play. All you have to do is be off vision enough towards a certain side, and Gwen actually can't walk up. See, she's in the area, but you know she can't walk up because LeBlanc isn't on vision. Ziggs is calling it. Even if she's not actually there, she's essentially there and not there all at the same time, right? So that allows them to get the first tower entirely for free. So they take the entirety of first tower in exchange for 1 Ocean Drake early. That's huge. Right? And this is another thing I was talking about. Again, he's 0-0-0, but he's entirely running the early game, which is just fantastic job on his end, right? He's pinging out Jace TP now, saying, all right, maybe we can look for a play bot side here, right? And one thing that he has to actually know is that Jace has to be, basically, what he's looking for is for Jace to 100% be ready, because once you show that you're basically overloading topside in order to get top tower, the natural play for IMT to do is to make a play on bot side and actually look to dive the Senatom catch. It's not easy, but you're pinging out the TP, basically saying, all right, keep an eye on that, and make sure that if they dive, you can TP down, right? You can be there to actually try to counter the dive, or at least trade back. Right, so at this point, Spica and Jace are both on Mythic, when I think no one else in the game is. Yeah, no one else in the game is. So they're basically the 2 strongest people in the game due to the fact that they got their first tower gold and all the plates. Right? So they were ready to counter that if they had to. Works out nicely. Again, I have stronger topside, so I can just come in and take every single one of your buffs. You can't get any of them, right? This is the exact stuff you should be doing to choke out junglers when you have better solo laners. Like when your solo laners are this strong, there's no reason to ever give them any part of their topside. Something that you should constantly be looking to do as a jungler if you're actually in the spot. And Spica gets on it perfectly. All right, he gets that for free, and because he staggered timers on blue buffs, so he got Volibear's last blue buff and then walked down and took his own. He knows that there's no way that Volibear could actually just trade buffs with him, right? So he's basically 3-buffing Volibear at 13 minutes, which is nice. Keeps his ward, gets out. So this is another situation where the reason he wants to kind of force to take these camps here with the solo lanes is not just to just kind of starve out Volibear. It's also to keep Jace safe, right? Because what happens when you take out these camps and you're actually like on the top side of the map, it allows you to not fall behind in farm, so you're not just sitting there doing nothing. and not farming. It allows you to continue farming while keeping Jace safe, right? So you're in the area if something like that, Volibear Yumi comes through. So you're putting yourself in a spot where you're basically a mobile ward while you're also getting stuff done for yourself when it comes to actually farming, right? So now, all right, they spotted him there. He knows there's no camps on the top side, unless he's just going to int his clear entirely and get no gold for the next 3 minutes. He can't just stay up there and just continue to harass Jace. So Jace is again safe. He has to go back to his bot side. So this is something that while he's on his Raptors here, he kind of notices that Jace is kind of spot out, or not Jace, the Ziggs is kind of spot out, and he says, all right, this is a play that we can actually make here. He starts pathing down immediately. He knows where the Ziggs is. He knows LeBlanc has really good all-in potential. And unluckily, I don't think he misses the Q. I just think Xerxes blocks it. It's unfortunate, but it's what happens. They still get flashes out of Volibear and Ziggs, so that play's still entirely worth it. Yeah, again, he just continues to take all of Volibear's camps. He knows where he has to be because he just took his top side, so he knows that Volibear had to have path bot side. He's in the area waiting for red to come up. Because mid and bot are in the spots that they actually are, especially mid pressuring that hard, he knows that he can do this with relative impunity. They can't ever really pick him out because he just walks back towards his mid side and they keep him safe, right? So at this point, he's essentially managed to keep Jay safe, managed to make a play on mid lane, as well as take away 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of Volibear's 6 camps, all within the last 2-minute period, just using solo lane pressure, right? So he's probably at least 1,000 gold up on Volibear at this point, if not more, just off the plates and off the counter jungling and the fact that he's kind of denied him so many of his buffs. It's something that you're okay with as Volibear, but it is really kind of necessary to do if you're going to be playing Lee Sin jungle, right? So again, he's walking up here, looking to just kind of keep them away from being dove. And he's got his camps at the same time. Skip ahead a bit. Handing over blue buff, perfect. Skip ahead a bit. Dragon's going to be spawning in about 45 seconds, maybe to a minute. Because it's Cloud, they don't have to over-index in actually taking the Drake. They don't really care if they get it or not. If it were any other Drake, they'd be probably setting up around bot right now. But setting up into Ziggs and Ezreal poke gets very, very difficult, so you more have to kind of look for picks ahead of the Drake actually coming up, right? And you can kind of see, again, the difficulty in playing the comps, because what ends up happening, look what happens when you try to get into a choke point. You're going against Ziggs, you're going against Volibear Yumi, you're going against Ezreal. You can't ever actually get in without taking half of your HP and damage. And at that point, the fight's already lost, right? So instead, they look to pressure down. They know, all right, we can't contest it. This is something that I'm really kind of glad about. What too many North American teams will do in this kind of situation is they'll just kind of continue to look for an angle to get into the Drake pit, even when it's very clear they can't. They got there too late. They can't do it. They can't ever actually get in the pit, and they'll just kind of watch the other team do Dragon. This is something that should literally never ever happen, right? Once TSM realizes they can't get in, they send Lee Sin and LeBlanc here. They look to get mid tower, and when you open up mid tower, you can open up vision around basically wolves and raptors, and kind of open up the map a bit. At the same time, you have Hootie topside, and you're looking to just kind of trade towers in exchange for a Cloud Drake, which is something you can totally do at this stage. Again, TSM also kind of identifies the fact that Cloud Drake isn't going to be what actually wins them this game, or Cloud Soul isn't really going to be what wins them this game. They have to be able to set up a good enough side lane presence and get as many towers down as possible and break inhibitor as fast as possible to really kind of get the game rolling. So once they realize that, and now that they've realized that, they know that the next big objective for them is actually Herald, because what Herald can do is Herald can allow them to partially ignore some of the wave clear from the Ziggs and I guess the Ezreal at that point from range to force down towers that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise. Because at this stage in the game, like Ziggs just throwing down EQ can just get rid of an entire wave. So needing the next Herald is something that they actually really need to get the to get an inhibitor broken down. Most likely on top side if I had to guess, because that's yeah. Inhibitors exposed on top side. If they're going to use it anywhere, it'll probably be on top side if they get the chance to. So here you're up against Bully Yumi. You're getting run down. He's never actually at risk of dying here, but he does take some poke damage, right? So this is something that's definitely like kind of planned out. Initially, his idea is to get out. He knows his bot side is resetting, however, so he's keeping an eye on that, seeing when they get back. They have Tom Kenchult, so they're in a spot where if they really have to, they can look for a fight here. And they are at this point in the game, they are still stronger in a 5v5 if Immortals doesn't space properly. So they force out ultimates, they force out big cooldowns. He gets out anyway, knowing he has Senna ult, and Jace gets a TP flank off. This is something I thought was set up very nice. Again, you're getting first blood at 18 minutes, and at this stage in the game, right after this fight, again, let's say even before this fight, so before the kills even go down, let's see what Spica's gotten out of this, right? Global event stream, right here, right? At the stage in the game, just off of Spica's just essentially counter jungling and getting his top side ahead, they're already up 3k gold before any kills even come in. That's just strictly off of just pathing and keeping Huni and PoE as safe as possible from Volibear and stopping Volibear from being able to get any ganks down early, right? After this point, they get the double kill. Now it's 18 minutes. They're up essentially 4,000 gold for free, and that's something that like really just comes down to Spica understanding what he has to do to really get the win off. Because, like I said before, do the draft, the only real way that you can win the game is by getting the Jace and LeBlanc to be strong enough where they can be legitimate side lane threats. Or at the very least, get them to the point where they're not behind. Because if Volibear gets 1 to 2 good ganks off early on the top side of the map, the game just blows open entirely, because then you're in a spot where you can't match the Gwen, Ziggs just wave clears infinitely, and you essentially just can't play the game. Because you're just outranged, you're getting out-pushed, your towers are falling way too quickly, and you're in a spot where you're really just kind of doomed. So I think that what Spica did here, again, really fantastic. I love the fact that he's checking his lane states, checking to see what's actually possible, where he has to be at any given point, understanding that when waves are bouncing, he has to kind of be able to defend if it's a large crash, look to defend dives on certain parts of the map. I just think overall Spica's Proview is really nice. I think that I'm excited to see where his career ends up going. I know he's been for about, a year and a half, 2 years now. So I think that he's someone that can really just kind of take over the jungle petition North America. I think it's pretty good. So I think later in the week I'll probably be doing an LPL Proview. I want to do a mid lane Proview to kind of see how that goes. So I'll be putting that out later in the week, and let me know if there's anything else you want to see, or if anyone has access to Korean Proviews, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to take a look at those. And otherwise, thanks for watching.